So we're in your biology book and we're talking about muscles, and we got down to 7.5 here, and we were talking about some muscles, and I had to stop my video. So let's go on with these muscles. So we're looking at the muscles of your ribs, and you can see here's a picture in your book. You see where the sternum is and the ribs, and in between each one of these ribs are muscles. And these muscles are called your intercostal muscles. And these are put there because they help to expand and contract when you breathe. So if we didn't have these muscles here, we wouldn't be able to breathe. So let's go on to the movements of the lower arms. And we went over the biceps and the triceps, but we didn't go over this picture here. That kind of tells about the biceps and the triceps here. So you see here, this being the biceps here, the biceps and the triceps behind, and they are opposite. They work in opposite from each other. So biceps, so that you could bring your forearm up, and then the triceps, so you can extend your forearm down. So you have these two muscles that react exactly opposite from each other. And then you have the pronator quadratus, and these that turn your arm, where you can turn your arm back and forth, the pronator teres. And they actually act opposite from each other. For every reaction, there's an opposite action, which you can say with muscles too. That's a physics. And going on to your hands. Let's go on to your hands down here at the bottom here. It talks about your hands, okay? So these are the muscles and tendons that move your hands. So muscles you can see are very long, and these long tendons, they go through this tunnel called a carpal tunnel. So the muscles react way back from your forearm all the way to your hand. So you can extend your fingers, and you can close your fist, all happening in your upper arm, through those muscles. And these go through this tunnel called the carpal tunnel. So going on the hand, and there's an article here on your amazing hand. It's kind of unique. They have 7 wonders of the body, and your hand and your foot are 2 of the wonders that God has made. Without your hand or your foot, you could basically not be able to do much, that's for sure. So your hand, others would probably be your eyes and your ears, and your heart and your brain. But now we have the human hand as one of our wonders that God made. And if we can read this article through, it's talking about that civilization would be impossible for mankind if he didn't have a hand, and how there's 27 bones in your hand and 8 bones in your wrist, alone, and all these muscles have to do with these bones. 14 possible phalanges in your finger bones, and each one having a muscle. And all the muscles going to react on your hands all the way from your shoulders to the tips of your fingers. You have muscles. So you can have a lot of dexterity at lifting, like lifting a spoon. Just to lift a spoon, you have 30 joints just to lift a spoon. Hope I can see the picture here. So, and then how important is your thumb to grasp things? That's one thing that mankind has that other animals do not have. Not even apes have the dexterity of our thumb, to be able to use our thumb in doing all these things, from being a trapeze artist down to the minute details. In every single occupation, you'll need your thumb, including playing the piano, any type of musical instruments, artists, painters, craftsmen, engineers, machine operators, doctors, and all of these ways, even communicating, writing books, typing, all to do with your thumb and your fingers. In fact, the hands are so important now. We use them even in language, and folding our hands in prayer. I love this article. You can read it over, all about our hands, one of the wonders of our body. And going on to our feet too, have the feet being the next wonder of our body. But let's look here at this picture first before we go on to the feet, because we already talked about our hamstrings and onto our quadriceps that are in our legs. Quad meaning four, so we have four of these muscles in the front of our legs, and then we have the hamstrings in the back of our legs. And you can see how they work opposite from each other. So here's a picture of the quadricep femoris in the front. Oh, it's pretty unique, and you can see right here the muscles in the front. And there's, like I said, 4 different types. Here's the skin, outside the skin here. Here's the femur bone. Here's your largest bone in your body there, the femur. And you can see where the blood vessels are coming through, these tiny blood vessels here. Actually, there's the arteries pretty major there in your next to your femur. You can see how if you break your femur bone, you could cut your artery there. So how important it is when you have a broken femur to get to the hospital, huh? And so then you see where the nerves are here, and this bone, the sartorius bone, this muscle, I should say, sartorius muscle coming down here, and where the hamstrings are. See all these hamstrings coming from the back of your leg. That's a great picture. So now we're going to go into section 7.6, engineered for power, the design of the skeletal muscle. So I think there was a part of here that talked about the feet. I think I did already go over the feet. Let's look at the article on your feet. Movements of the feet would be impossible. So we talked about the Achilles tendon. Oh, we had an article, I think we went over the article on your feet before, but how important it is one of the wonders. How can your feet hold your body and balance your body? So important to look at the bones and the muscles of your feet. Another great wonder of our body. So going on to the skeletal muscle. So let's look at this. This is a very good, I'm going to go over this picture. I read the whole thing. If you read it, it's kind of hard to understand, but this picture explains everything that they're talking about. So let me go over this picture here. The design of the skeletal muscle, so important how it's designed. So let's move it up here so you get more of it in there. We're going to have to move it up as we go. So we have the skeletal muscle and how it's extremely reliable and it's extremely powerful. In fact, it's estimated that a muscle can be to 100 to 1,000 newtons of energy, of power. Can you imagine? That's just in our muscles. And there's no external maintenance to this. Our muscles just react, just as God has made them on their own. So how amazing is that? And they're also not only very powerful, but they're very precise to the smallest tendons. So now we're going to talk about the design of the skeletal muscle in the muscle fibers, okay? So here we have this picture here. We're going to take the muscle, of course, we're going to take the muscle there in your arm. Basically, that biceps muscle here we're going to look at, which is a common muscle. If you bend your arm up, you can feel your biceps there, huh? And so now it's going to show this, taking a little piece of this muscle down here. You'll see it's surrounded by what's called fascia. This fascia is like a sheath that holds the muscle together. And then here's your muscle. And then in each little one of these parts here is what is called a fascicle. And there's lots of fascicles there. They're little encased, tough, translucent, and little sheaths of, they call it epimysin. And they bind these muscles together into strong, muscle tendons there. So you see right there, you'll see the muscles. So, and they're epimysin, epi meaning skin out, basically your skin. And then you'll see down here is perimysin. So now we're going to take from this bundle here that we're talking about, fascia of the muscle. See how it comes from the arm down to that little piece there? Now we're gonna go take one of these tiny pieces of this and we're gonna magnify it. And this is the way it looks. There's the paramecium now. It's not epimecium anymore, it's paramecium. It's basically surrounding each one of these pieces. These are called fascicles. We're gonna look at these, we're gonna look at this small fascicles of this, and they're the paramecium wrapping around instead of the endomysium. Remember, we had epimycin, we had endomycin, and now paramycin. And they go into these little fascicles. There's thousands of fascicles here. And you can see, okay, let's look at these fascicles. We're going way down into, see that now they're surrounded by endomycin. Remember, we have epimycin, paramycin, endomycin. Fascicles coming, and this are the muscle cells right here. You can see how the muscle cells are long, very long and striated skeletal muscle cells. So that's what it's talking about. It's talking about how we magnify down from this design of a skeletal muscle, down taking one little piece of this, down to these fascia, down to the fascicles there, and down to the basic muscle cells. So now let's talk about the structure of these muscle cells. Okay, now we're gonna magnify it even more. We're gonna go by this picture. What a great picture here too. So this is the structure of a skeletal muscle. This is, you look at these cells and they're so different from each other. So now we have the structure of this muscle, and see how long they are. They're long and flexible cylinders. They're 1,000 times longer than they are wide. And they're very self-contained, each one, and they're self-repairing. They repair themselves. It's how God designed them. And they have their own power plants, their own fuel, their own storage places. These are amazing, amazing cells. The muscle cell has, as you can see the cell membrane on the muscle cell. They have a cell membrane that goes around. You can see here's a picture that kind of folded the membrane out here. So you can see where the cell membrane is right here, folding it out, surrounds the cells here. So the cell membrane contain more than one nucleus. You see the cell, here's 2 nucleus on this cell. Here's 1 nucleus up here and 1 nucleus over here. So these cells are very unique. They have 2 nucleuses. They're larger, they have lots of mitochondria. Why do you think they have lots of mitochondria? Mitochondria are the power plants of the muscle, right? They need a lot of energy, don't they? So they have lots of mitochondria. These mitochondria are the cell's power plants. And they also have complex pipes and pumps, even in the midst of the cell. The microfibrils, they're the length of the cell, and they contract. And these are the contract machines. Remember, muscles have to contract. So they need those myofibrils to contract, and they have dozens of them. So here we have the myofibrils in the picture. Can you see this? Here's the mitochondria, these tiny, tiny mitochondria. Now we have the myofibrils that contract in the midst. And so they also have what's called sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarcoplasmic reticulum that goes all the way through, and they have transverse tubule. And they have yellow written there, but those 2 things are pretty important. The sarcoplasmic reticulum basically reacts with the sarcomeres, or millions of those little protein fibers in there. And they have a protein of myosin, and they have protein of actin. Myosin and actin being in the cells that bring the energy in the cell. They are these filaments that work together like little winches and cables that shorten the cell. How amazing. The sarcoplasma reticulum and the transverse tubes there work together to trigger the myofibrils to contract. And that's when your muscle contracts and moves. That's what moves your muscle. So going down here, they have a picture of this. right here, the myofibril, okay? So here we have the cell membrane and all, and the myofibrils are these tiny little things right here. Now they magnified the myofibrils here and show you how they look. They look like they're stacked blocks, don't they? Or stacked sheets, I should say. And they have myosin and actin, and these act too so that they can contract. See how they're contracting together. They contract. They contract. They don't extend. They only contract. That's what muscles have to have opposite muscles that work in the opposite direction to be able to contract. So this is very good pictures of here, so you can see the muscle, how unique. And remember, this here is magnified from this little section to this section of the myofibril in the cell. What a complex muscle cell. It's contracting, the actin and the myosin pulling together and contracting in the midst. And they have to be ignited by a nerve cell to do this. And so we're going to talk about the nerve impulse reception. The nerve impulse reception is basically a muscle, how it's triggered by the nervous system. So I think I'm going to stop there and go on to it, and we'll finish up because I still have to go over the next section too.